during this live webinar, especially from about the time I make that prayer of gratitude right at the beginning, a lot of healing takes place. And I can only say so much, right? I have one mouth and I can do one word at a time, but what's happening inside is a lot. And one of the reasons, I think the reasons that we do this is that coming together with the intention for these live webinars and healings, it activates the healing potential in the physiology. So that means that that part of the being becomes very active and starts to go to work on your behalf, starts to address the areas that need to be addressed gently, compassionately. The other thing that is happening, and I love giving you guys the inside mechanics, telling you what's going on inside me, because that's part of the process, part of the educational process, making you self-sufficient. But part of what's happening too in this early part, before we actually really get into our full swing, is looking at, what I'm doing is I'm looking at the connections within the group and then between the group and the larger collective of mankind. So I can kind of get a feel for what's going on in world consciousness and human consciousness and in the family, the larger family of humanity, and how everybody's feeling, and if there are any little areas that need to be addressed right from the off, like that. Okay. All right, so it's 11 o'clock. Let's begin. We'll start, as always, with a little prayer of gratitude and then dive in. Well begun is half done. Thank you, Ma. Thank you to the source of creation, the unified field of all the laws of nature, the birther of all the universes, for being the very soul of this live webinar. Thank you to all the diversified forms and expressions, the fact that that single underlying unity of all creation chooses to express itself in infinite diversity. Thank you to that process, and thank you. That's the manifesting process right there. And thank you to all those forms and expressions which come forth from that divine process. Thank you to everyone's ancestors for their willingness to participate in this healing, for their abiding love and constant support of all of us, of our evolution, of our hearts, of our health, of our ability to reach our full potential in this lifetime. Thank you to the divine in each of us, that aspect of pure awareness, of pure consciousness that resides with each person, for blessing this live webinar with your presence, with the ability to concisely address the manifesting process with maximum effectiveness, to empower everyone who's here with as much information and tools and resources as possible to support your ability to dive into this aspect of your own potential and start to utilize it effectively in your own lives. And for everyone, thank you. Okay, so for those who are new, a quick overview. Energy healing is a process whereby attention is directed in an intelligent manner to specific areas of the being that require totality, completeness, or wholeness in order to function normally in a healthy manner, in order to reflect that highest dignity of creation. And we're looking at ourselves in this process. If you remember the write-up on today's webinar, we're going to talk about using our own resources. One of the main principles of energy healing is that we can use our own consciousness to heal ourselves, much as the placebo effect. And I know the word placebo effect has not always strong connotations with it with regards to, oh, well, it's not objective or whatever, but that's really only because there hasn't been a lot of research on it. It's because it hasn't really been aligned with Western thinking, Western medicine. So the truth is that every human body has the innate potential and the innate capability to heal itself. So we're just watching how that activates up within the group, and a kind of a warmth moving in through the mental and emotional bodies. And that's the other point. I want to make sure we're all on the same page with regards to terms. So I talk about the source of creation, and there are a zillion names for the source of creation. But I will make clear that that's what I'm talking about when I mention it. Then we have our physicality. The source of creation manifests forth up in our level of reality all the way up to this physical, material, solid level. So that's our kind of outwards aspect of our range of manifestation. And then there's all this in-betweensy bit. And I put my fingers up like this because I tend to divide this continuum from unmanifest to manifest into 8 levels. But I do that for the sake of all of us being able to collectively get our attention into exactly the concise level required in order to make the changes to activate wholeness or totality at that point. So just a second ago, I was talking about mental and emotional levels, and I consider those about here. You've got physical, etheric, mental, emotional, and arbitrary names, astral, spirit, causal, celestial. But we will talk about those in more detail as we go along. All right. The other thing that is happening right now is I want you to know that I am the reflection of your process at this point. And all of us together have a process that we're into collectively. And so even though I could launch into some outline or something, it feels the correct thing to do is to look into the group and sensitively pick out what needs to be done, cueing off of your finest intelligence, your divine being. Divine being, that's another name for the source of creation. And one of the things I'm seeing is a desire for maximum coherence in the group. So downloads for everyone. When I refer to download, I mean information coming in, usually through the crown of the head. And this download has to do with integration. We were working a lot with integration yesterday as well. This time, integration within the context of internal dynamics, communication and structure, and ability to be connected to each other in the group, and the ability of the group to be connected to the larger whole of humanity. So integration, simple concept, but when it starts to apply at various levels of being, can become very beautiful, interesting. We're looking into particularly integrations at these finer levels of the physiology. Actually, right now, it looks like the integration energy is right here between the denser levels of the physiology and the subtler levels of the physiology, connecting what we think of as our present self to eternal self. And what I'm understanding from this is that this junction point between present self and eternal self, you can think of a kind of a figure 8 shape too, or this beautiful shape where you get the 2 circles crossing each other and then there's that little space in the middle. That from that point, the whole system is affected by the integration. So if we want to fill integration into the gaps in the denser or subtler levels of the being, we can apply it here. It's a little bit like, the way Western medicine understands the application of different medicines. That there's certain places to apply the medicine to have maximum effect in that junction right there. Everything connects. It's also affecting the throat chakra. That helps for the sake of expression, using expression as a means of healing, using words as a way to heal oneself or to manifest since that's what we're talking about today. Manifesting health. Okay. So that integration. The reason we're going into this integration right now, at least this is what I'm seeing as the next step, unfolding. It's just unfolding in front of me. So I'm laying it out, what I'm seeing, is the ability to harness the manifesting potential of consciousness is based on one's ability to identify with one's own greatness, to put it in a nutshell. But to put it in more detail, if I only identify with my physicality, I can use my physicality to evolve great things. You know, I can become very physically skillful. I can become good at playing a musical instrument or doing a sport or whatever else. And we know that there's a certain amount of integration with intelligence. You have to understand technique. You have to be able to, certain things we get good at with our physical body, like say tennis, you have to be able to kind of psych out your opponent and so forth. So, you know, there are subtler aspects to those, but primarily, if the physical is how we identify, then life's orientation is towards manifestation at a physical level. And that can be successful up to a certain point if we only deal physically. But then there comes a point where one realizes that part of it's based on luck, right? Part of it's being at the right place at the right time or having the right connections. And so if you want to become, say, a great opera singer, you know, part of it is having a really good mechanism and being well trained, but part of it is also, you know, being the right height and having the right connections and things like that at a time when it's popular and so forth. So being able to be on stage in front of a big audience, you may have a great voice, but if you're shy in front of an audience, that doesn't work. So the thing is that self-identification is a basic premise here. And the greater capacity we have to expand our understanding of ourself, the greater capacity we have to harness the mechanisms that are at play at different levels of the manifesting process. Now, I know that for a lot of you, you're already deeply connected into your infinite being. Everybody knows how to find their infinite being, their source of creation, part of their being. And for those who are familiar with that process of experiencing life in the physicality and then going in and experience that infinite silence, pure, unmanifest quality of self, that there's a contrast between that physicality part and that silent part. So part of the process of mastering the manifesting skills is to start to get more familiar with the finer layers of that inner range, that inner realm. It's a very, very fine, tender realm between the unmanifest and the manifest. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. I would like to go into that now a bit and discuss familiarizing oneself with one's own greatness, with one's eternal nature. Because the familiarity with the source of thought, with the source of creation, brings about the awareness that that infinity, silent, unmanifest, is actually present in all the more manifest levels of being. What's happening is I'm seeing some blockages at the astral, spirit, causal, and celestial levels of the being ancestrally. So what I'm seeing is that ancestors have a habit or pattern of not identifying themselves or even identifying infinity at those levels of the physiology. So we're just going to go in and look at that for a moment. There seems to be a lot of structures that look like defense mechanisms sitting in this area of the physiology, defense mechanisms, egoic structures. So when we're looking at egoic structures, forgiveness is the first flow that wants to come through and support. So we're looking at ancestors, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Actually, it goes back further than that, 12, 14, 20, looks like we're going to be counting centuries, 1,000 years, 12,000 years, 1,000 years, 1,200, 1,400. Can we go to 2,000? 2,000 feels easy. Going to 2,200, 2,200, 2,200 likes to stop there. So that's good. 2,200 years. Ancestral patterns on Mother Earth. That means a lot of touching most of humanity with this. And what's sitting here is there's a lot of fear woven in with those egoic structures. So egoic structures are like self-definition, how I identify myself, and then there's all this fear crushed in around it. Anger, there's also anger and the way we express anger. Belief systems associated with how we express anger. So this is the reading part. There'll be two parts as we're going along, right? The seeing part and then the transformational part. All this so that as a race, as a humanity, as a family, an Earth family, we can manifest a reality for Earth right now in this highly volatile transitional period of Earth's history, which is good for everyone, which benefits all, and which sets the foundation for our world to move into a very golden time, a very wonderful time, sustainable energy practices and resources and opportunities for everyone. So this is a big, we're already in a group, we're already in a collective manifesting phase. The group as a whole is functioning in a unified manner. And what we're doing is, and I'm just describing as quickly, going into the finest, simplest, tenderest way of looking at that desire for mankind. This is tying into this healing for the subtle bodies of the ancestors. What we need to do is they need to understand that in order for us to survive as a planet, that they need to shift these levels of their being. But in order for them to understand that, they have to have the same vision that we do. And we're up at this point with all this technology and so forth. So we've got this perspective based on technology that they don't have. So we need to communicate that vision to them in a way which is comprehensible to them. Comprehensible? Comprehensible. I think both are words. Their ability to comprehend. That's why the words came up, right? Because that's my mouth getting ahead of my brain and my mouth saying, telling me, communicating to me that their ability to absorb that information. They have gotten some downloads, but we need to be able to bring in this vision for our world in a way which is so comprehensible. That's part of the defense mechanism, is getting caught in semantics, getting caught in, the point value, and we're approaching this from a very global level. So that's like a little mechanism. It's like a little vicious cycle or defense mechanism that gets caught in the little detail. Oh, you didn't say the word quite right or whatever, or this word's going to work for me, but that one's not, or whatever. So what we're doing is we're going into that point value and that tendency. It's like a little vicious cycle or a loop that the brain gets caught in of when we're taking out the tiger, it's caught worrying about the fly. So right there, that is clearing. And that's, like I said, it's a defense mechanism. There's anger and pain bodies and attachments connected to that, and lots of the egoic structures. And those are there in the, we're mostly working it from this gap, but they're also down in these subtler levels of the physiology for the ancestors going back 2,200. I'm watching it so I can report. Lots of tenderness. What's happening in the group is a heart activation, because what we're doing like a mother is we're just holding that. We're holding this body of ancestral information. It's all in our DNA. So what we're really doing is we are restructuring our own DNA. When we're working with ancestors, we're working with DNA. We're restructuring our own DNA, clearing off these little spots that tend to silence the potential of the DNA. The potential of the DNA is to open to a global vision and to function from our own individual perspective, and yet in a way which is absolutely powerful and absolutely supportive of the highest good for everyone. And I'm opening question. Let's close that. Sorry, guys. Okay. The reason we got into this thing with the ancestors was they were having difficulty understanding how infinity can be found at every point of manifestation. And it's that infinite nature of being at every point in manifestation that is responsible for effective manifesting process. We talked about this a lot yesterday. There's this process of having your situation as it is right now, and it needs to dissolve. The principles of Thomas Kuhn, the principles of Vedic science. Thomas Kuhn was a famous scientific philosopher of the last century who kind of outlined this process with regards to the evolution of scientific thinking. But cool guy. Anyway, the present paradigm dissolves. And then there's that point of all possibilities where nothing has manifested yet. And then the remanifestation process begins. It starts up from the other side, and the new possibility comes. If infinity is present at every point in the manifesting process, then at any point in that process, all possibilities can come out. But from a practical point of view, I wanted to bring this more to practical stuff today. I'm just checking, but I wanted to make sure that the healings are complete, very good. And the changes that happened, there's a very, very big transformation process that took place for the ancestors and for world consciousness. Thank you to all of you for your beautiful hearts. It was because of the heart, it was because of the softness, the compassion, the empathy, the ability to support all those individuals whose egoic structures were feeling a little tender, to help support that ability for that structure to unwind from these subtle levels of the physiology and therefore allow for the awareness of infinity. And then that, thank you, brings us back to the point that I was making earlier, that our placement or our understanding of who we are is essential for being able to harness the potential at any point in the manifesting process. So, identifying with the 4 denser levels of the physiology gives us that ability to work in space-time right now and to maintain this relative manifest level of ourself in a way which supports our ability to do stuff. Here is where the really fine mechanics, the really powerful levels of the manifesting process take place. It's in this more delicate area. So self-identification at this delicate level involves, the first point is realizing that, yes, I am all this physicality, and yes, I am that silent field of unmanifest being. But then integrating that silence into who and what I know myself to be at this finer level involves being able to connect sense of self with the great, the traditions of masters, the angelic realms here, traditions of masters here, with everything my soul has ever experienced since the beginning of creation here, and with the collective of mankind and the collective of corporeal life and the collective of universal life here. So the tendency is to look out to the rest of creation and say, well, I'm me here and my friend who's sitting over here on the couch watching this with me, well, he's somebody different. But the reality is that our bodies are very abstract and non-localized at the finer levels of creation. And therefore, yes, the being of all creation is experiencing the lecture from your perspective and also from the perspective of your friend. That's true. But the reality is there's a part of you that is experiencing both simultaneously. And of course, as a group, where this integration is continuing to flow through the group very softly. I'm seeing it in a kind of a quiet way, a very quiet, gentle way. And I'm also seeing, it's very interesting, looks like various sacred geometrical patterns of connections of chords or beams of light within the group. They're moving in various ways to make various kinds of connections within the group amongst all of us, which is very sweet. Each one has its own upgrade that comes with it. So as each sacred geometrical form overlays on the group, we all receive new values of information, new kinds of information that are part of the physical upgrading that is a byproduct of the upgrade that we just did on the DNA. To recreate our bodies at extreme level of health, extreme level of functioning, the brain, lots of good reworking for the brain physiology so that that becomes a tool, and the heart. I'm enjoying it. It's a little bit like sitting on the edge of the ocean on the shore and watching those waves come in. It can be mesmerizing. Wave after wave of patterns that are being produced within the group. But that's okay. I have to trust, I always trust in these, that your divine being knows exactly what it's doing. And so my job is only to report. What it's saying is, I offered this perception that these multiplying of forms are happening in the group, and what I got back was that each form is a different perspective or angle of looking at reality. Think of them like laws of nature. If we have a kind of a sacred geometrical form, a kind of a mandala-like or symmetrical form, which is connecting all of us in a particular way, that it gives not only each of us a perspective on what we're doing, but these forms have life force. They are being. And this is about where we left off yesterday's session, is that the field of infinite silence is a field of pure being. Pure being. There are no gaps. There's nothing but being. But at the denser levels of creation, we start to get more spaces, little silences, like a piece of music. You know, you could think of pure being as like a great hum of the whole universe, hum like that, there's no space. But then you get up into these more manifest levels and you get bum, bum, bum. You get little spaces between the notes, right? You start to be able to decipher out what the details are. So at this finer level of creation, this finer level of our physiology, we are in the habit of being very kind of in a saturated being state, and a very being is much more fluid and it's much thicker and it's closer to us, and it's comfortable like that. It's cozy, feels good. Also, things that don't have forms and shapes like human bodies are also living things. So these beautiful shapes are like laws of nature, but they're also alive. They have intelligence in them, and they structure intelligence in an orderly fashion, and thus allow all of us to receive and understand at deeper and greater levels. And what we're understanding is our own nature. This is your nature. All these forms that we're looking at, they are reflected at this level, actually all of them, but you know, very much tied into the spirit level of the physiology, which has to do with our interface with laws of nature. This level of reality has to do with, of our physiology, interfaces with the rest of the environment, the rest of this particular manifested universe. When we get down to spirit level, the physiology, we start looking at our relationship to water, our relationship to gravity, our relationship to crystalline structures in the grid of creation that flow information, and so forth. And the whole story of the soul is there, the whole history, where we were important participants in the creation of this universe, this level of reality. So this is who you are. It's good to know this is who you are, to love yourself at that level, to honor yourself at that level, because from that level, certain laws of nature are accessible, which support the manifesting process in such a way as to guarantee greater success in whatever it is that we want to create. And as I mentioned before, one of the, I know each person in this group has specific areas of their life that they would like to see improvements. But as a collective, the divine self is asking us to continue this work that we're doing. It's kind of a dedicated work of devotion for the well-being of all of humanity as well. Continuing from yesterday's talk. On the note of supporting our own, a question came in, so I want to answer that. I want to honor that question. And the question was if we could do some specific work in 4 basic areas: health, wealth, relationships, and expansion of consciousness. So some of the work that we've been doing up to now has been sort of oriented towards expansion of consciousness, because in order for consciousness to expand, there has to be this wave back and forth between the relative and the absolute, so that physiology upgrades and then consciousness expands more, which gives rise to greater upgrading and refinement of physiology, which gives rise to more expansion of consciousness and so forth. So we did a few waves like that already so far in this session, but it would be nice to look at some of these other areas, because I know that a lot of the desires of you here with me today all fall into these other areas. I'm looking if we want to go health, wealth, relationships. Oh, relationships. It likes relationships next. Okay, beautiful. So manifesting relationships. Everything starts as a wave of conscious intention. Therefore, first, the vision is there. First, the longing. The longing is there for some improved communication, some softness and compassion and empathy to be present in all relationships, or the creation of a relationship which has not yet happened that would be very fulfilling. We want to look at which aspect of ourself, which area of our own self-identification is associated with that. And I offer that manifesting from the level of finest identification. This is where we are a field. We are a field that encompasses everything in the known universe, including virtual possibilities. It's very big. It feels like an aspect of the self, even beyond the honoring and the association with the great traditions of great manifestors who've ever been to Earth, who've ever been the archivists of all the most powerful and important knowledge throughout the history, not only of our Earth, but of other Earths. These great, great beings, we run into them here at the spirit level and the causal level. When we get down to the celestial level, this is the part of the self that's even beyond that. Downloads for everyone. It is like a tenderest, simplest seed of understanding one's own nature at that level of being. And so much appreciation, so much love, so much compassion for the true nature of self at that level. Thank you. At this level, we find all relationships are relationships with ourself. All relationships are found within the self. So it comes down to how one self relates. And that little seed of desire Oh, I wish my relationships were really harmonious. Oh, I wish I could have a sweetheart in my life who was really nice to me, or whatever the desire. Oh, I wish I had a best friend forever. At that level of being, that relationship already exists because the thought or the idea of the relationship is a living reality. So what we do is we take that living reality of that relationship into its simplest form. Very simple, very basic, is just a wave of fulfillment. It's a wave of satisfaction. It's a wave of feeling complete. And from that point of it feeling complete, then that completion is offered like a flower back to the feet of one's own divine nature. And divine nature, pure being, infinite in its scope and capacity, takes that tender, simple flow or tender, simple concept, vision, experience, and multiplies it to its infinite degree, So for that relationship, for that harmonious relationship, for that loving relationship that deserves life, that deserves to find expression at the relative material level of creation. What happens for I'm watching is it starts to loop. It starts to loop around from offering it like a flower at the feet of God back into the physical form of the body, and the body starts responding as if the relationship already exists, creating various neurochemicals associated with being in such a satisfying relationship. And then what happens is, this is the spot. There's like a little imbalance right up at the, it looks like mental level, the physiology, unconscious and subconscious levels of the mind. I tend to divide that layer into 4 layers: conscious, subconscious, unconscious, avenue of awareness. Anyway, at those 2 levels, that idea that it's fulfilled in any way other than folding it back onto one's own self. Because we can have our own conscious idea of what that relationship looks like and what it's supposed to be at a very dense, very fleshed out level. But the reality is that relationship will never exceed our expectations unless we let it go. It's the only way to put it in the hands of divine intelligence, where it can be crafted into something that will be really, really beyond anything that we can imagine at this moment in creation. And that is then therefore suiting the laws of the cosmos, which are to expand and grow, constantly moving into new territory, constantly integrating divine nature into denser and denser, more manifest levels of creation. So clearing from the mental, body, subconscious, unconscious levels of the mind, and some into the avenue of awareness as well, at least as far as mentally avenue of awareness, my mental pictures, expectations, clearing expectations, judgments. There's some ego in there, wants to clear also. Discordant feelings of I don't really deserve to have my desire fulfilled, because all that clinging to the expectation of it results in the desire not getting fulfilled, and then layer and layer and layer, and that goes back. Now the energy is looping here. Okay, we're here. The energy is looping through these bodies. It's clearing all those discordant feelings, egoic structures, etc. Because there are layers and layers and layers of old habits and patterns, not only within our physiologies, but within the physiology of humanity. Again, reflecting back to the ability of our world family as a collective to manifest a reality that we totally deserve, a reality of dignity for all, of a healthy planet, of resources for all, of comfort for all. Those feelings of I don't deserve because I kept trying and trying and trying and it never worked. Those feelings are just they're clogging up the system. So they're sitting in this area here. A lot of it's impressions left over from the distant past. And I feel as if those ancestors are also still with us, enjoying this lovely release, this lovely liberation from those structures on the level of consciousness which have been unuseful for the manifestation process. And there's a question that comes up. The question is, but don't sometimes I need some challenges in my reality in order to help me grow and move forward faster? And the answer is yes. It makes you more adorable. It makes you more beloved. It makes you more precious, because that means divinity gets a chance to penetrate into a harder knot of pain. And when it penetrates into a harder knot of pain and dissolves that pain, then that area that was in pain gets completely flooded with the light of divine being. And as that happens, this is evolution of the entire creation. You've become the instrument for the evolution of God, which is an aspect of your own self. So you became the physical level of the self becomes the instrument to allow all the deeper levels of being to evolve. It's like it's the difference between long-term goals and short-term goals, basically. If in the short term, I feel like, I would like a sweetheart, somebody who would really be wonderful for me and my best friend, and, totally somebody I can share all my nice experiences with and feel romantic, et cetera, the short-term goal. But the long-term goal is, what do I need to do to create the foundation so that that is going to be a reality and going to happen? All those foundational steps that don't seem to directly lead to that goal. Being able to love myself, being able to accept love, being able to be compassionate and empathetic for the feelings of others, right? And how do we do that? When our own divine nature can penetrate through to the hardest, nastiest, most painful little knots of stress in our own being, then we understand how that flow works in that area. All of a sudden, those mechanics are revealed. Oh, that's how divinity penetrates self-hatred. You're not a terrible person if you have feelings that are unpleasant. It's just that at that moment, you are self-sacrificing for the sake of evolution of the much larger, greater aspects of your own being, and for the collective as well. And we always have a choice. You always have a choice. We can go through it slowly and painfully, or we can go through it faster, or we can choose to learn the lesson in a way which is pleasant. That's also an option. It's just that there's a long, long ancient tradition in humanity, and particularly because of the level at which manifestation occurs on this planet, to do it the hard way. And there have also been there's been a really big, talk about politics, very big sort of cosmic political structures around what goes on Earth in order to kind of, to a certain degree, keep Earth in a state, and this has been going, by my perception, for a very, very long time, many, many centuries, to keep Earth in a state where human beings go through their lessons in somewhat painful ways. But we are, at this very moment, the work that you are doing in this healing webinar, that we are doing as a collective, is instrumental in raising the frequency of the consciousness of the family of humanity, and thus providing a foundation, long-term goal here, providing a foundation for the deservability of mankind to have its lessons manifest in ways which are comfortable, expansive, productive, life-supporting, compassionate, loving. Thank you. Seeing angelic forms, and that means your celestial bodies structuring in ways which promote deep sweetness, deep easiness and deep sweetness into the collective consciousness of mankind to soften up all those lessons. We're softening them. Nice expansion of the heart. What is it? Our lesson coming from an experience of heart overflowing with softness and expansion. It doesn't have to be painful. It can be so soft. It can be so sweet. Shifting, the whole karmic load of earth is kind of shifting over like that. The more of this compassion and softness that goes into the collective consciousness of humanity, the better we will be at accepting differences. The better we are at accepting differences, the faster we can move into our status as a global community who is able to accept differences of beings who look very different from us. And that's one of the things that we have to do as part of our own world unification, to be able to accept our own interpersonal differences from culture to culture to such a degree that then we can step into the bigger lesson, which is, how do you accept someone who's got 5 eyes? Could you imagine what the world would look like? Oh my. Anyway. Acceptance, integration. So we went from individual relationships up to global relationships, up to cosmic relationships. And it feels good. It feels satisfying. I think we've covered that. Let's go to the next area, wealth or health. Wealth or health. Oh, it wants to go to, hang on, because it's almost divided half and half. Looks like wealth. Health? Health. Okay, health. I'm just following you guys. And since it was a little divided, we're going out to the bigger collective. How does the bigger collective? Definitely health. Okay. So all physical imbalances can trace back to imbalances at deeper levels of the physiology. Here, there's a lot to be said about health, and I've got many webinars on this topic. But at this moment, what we're looking at are the laws of nature down here at the celestial and causal levels of the physiology, which are intelligences responsible for the proper functioning of various systems in the physiology, various systems of the body. Everything has intelligence. Everything has consciousness. There's only one thing in creation, just consciousness alone. Just being alone. That's all there is. So what I'm seeing is, on the level of health, for a lot of people, these intelligences have gone unrecognized, undetected, unhonored, and therefore, even though a person may say, oh, on the surface they say, oh, I want to feel healthy and I want to feel well, at the same time performing functions which are damaging to the very fine intelligences of the physiology. So what's happening is an activation for the heart chakra, auric field of the heart, the whole auric field. And this is going through ancestry, 6, looks like 6 generations of ancestors. Upgrade for the heart. Expansion of the capacity of the heart. What I'm seeing are there meridians that run from the heart, from the heart chakra area, all the way through the finer layers of manifested reality, and all the way into the source of creation. Just like we have a cord of light that runs from the crown of the head all the way down through the body and into Mother Earth. So we have meridians that run from our chakras, through the chakras, all the way into the source of creation. Integration. We're still integrating. Seems to be the theme of the weekend, is integration. Very nice. And that integration allows for a clean exchange of love from individuality to totality. So that flow back and forth, it's one love, it's one being in the heart, it's one heart. Oh, it's so sweet, you guys. Everybody's hearts are like one heart. We're like one big, soft, sweet, loving expression of goodness. Thank you all for being so dear. What I suggest, even though it's a temptation to turn that around and do more earth healing, I would like us to turn this around and do and offer it back into the very core of one's own soul, the very core of one's own being. Because such a big love, such a massive, unbounded, infinite, eternal love, such an eternal love, it's awakening. Oh, good. Look at you guys go. It's awakening the ability to self-identify with one's own structures, which range to a very great level of creation. Structures of self, which are godlike. If we can imagine anything, if you can imagine or think of anything, then that's you. That's consciousness, that's you. So if we can imagine a quality of self that's like, that keeps its sense of integrity, it keeps its sense of selfness all the way from the beginnings of the creation all the way to the end, beginning of the Big Bang, this manifest universe, to the end, the collapse at the other end, then that is an aspect of who we are. And that level of the self is being loved. It's being recognized. It's being appreciated. It's being understood. It's being understood. There have been, remember those barriers that we were clearing from the ancestors earlier, particularly the egoic structures, the ego structures and so forth? All those heavy defense mechanisms, big stone walls with cannons in them, blocking any entrance to that area. This is the area that was trying to be entered. Why? Because there was so much fear over the ideas of what could come about if we were really connected into that aspect of ourself. Sure, if the egoic structures are there, a person could be uncaring, but if they're not there, then we need that part of our being in order to be live our full potential. And it's this beautiful heart activation, all this big softness I'm offering back to the Mother of Creation. Thank you. And it is flowing to the Mother of Creation. It's flowing through that part of yourself into the source of creation, flowers at the feet of God. Thank you. And then she multiplies it to infinity. And as it goes to Ma, source of creation, and it flows to infinity, thank you. It has a stabilizing and refining effect on these parts of self which have been left neglected, which have been left unidentified, unappreciated. It's like your teeth. If you leave them alone, they go away. They're structures of self which are great, which are eternal, which are essential, which are collective. So we function as our own collective. You know, we get down into these finer levels of the physiology is already collective. Celestial body, causal body, already embraces and incorporates the rest of all life in creation. So why not love it up? It's opening. There are some very deep blockages still I'm seeing. What I'm seeing is, as I mentioned before, the process of expansion of consciousness is this, or how intelligence in the universe expands as it goes back and forth from a field of pure intelligence, pure knowingness, to the relative, back and forth like this. So refinement at the relative level, and then expansion in the consciousness, and then more refinement in the relative and more expansion in the consciousness, like that. And what I'm seeing are endocrine systems, which brings us health. Yes, we're on a health section, right? So endocrine systems. So we're looking at the intelligence that oversees the endocrine system for everybody in the group. Good job, everybody. We found a point value. Very yummy, very good. Endocrine system, intelligence of the endocrine system. You can give it any name you want. Call it the Deva of the endocrine system. Call it Joe. Whatever. The point is that that structure of the physiology, pituitary gland, overseeing administrator, Anya chakra. Also therefore, because the Anya chakra, well, the Anya chakra is actually the pineal gland, and then the pituitary gland is a little forward of it. But the thing is that they're right in the same territory, and that working with one affects the other and so forth. So there's also information coming into the being, into the physiology, physically, coming in physically, knowingness, coming in through the crown of the head, knowingness, understanding, wisdom, awareness. And so I'm just feeling it first physically as it comes in. This is a deep, loving, beautiful, nourishing upgrade for the pituitary gland. Doesn't matter how old you are or what phase of life. Benefits everybody. Doesn't matter gender, race. Oh, and for those listening in from other places who don't have physical bodies, but that do have a structure or function in this area. Because again, it's that softness. This whole thing is motivated by this huge, expansive, eternal love. So that's really the core of this knowingness. It's coming. That's like the flavor of it, the twist on it. You know, all this divine cognition that comes into the physiology is just pure being coming in. But then when there's a need in the physiology, a need for a completion, for resolution to an imbalance, then it comes in with just the right flavor, like an interference pattern. You've got something going on over here that's not complete, so the interference pattern comes in the exact opposite, and then together they create like a totality, a wholeness. So that eternal love, you can see it's building. Well, I didn't know at first which areas we're going to talk about first, but it's interesting how we talked about relationships first and establishing our ability to both understand and also manifest and manipulate laws of nature so that relationships can be maximum. Now we're in the health section and finding that the relationship section is supporting it. I love that. That's you guys' intelligence doing that. I'm just following you. I'm like following behind you like a bunny, hopping behind you as you go down the road, like your puppy. Beautiful upgrade. The beauty of this, what I love about this upgrade for the pituitary gland and also affecting other parts of the limbic system and the brain, the Anya chakra, is that this upgrade, what it does is it creates a closer harmony between the way the brain works and the way the heart works. Because the upgrade is actually on the level of this deep, compassionate, eternal love, which we think of in terms of heart more than we think of in terms of the intellectual mind, the academic mind or something. But the beauty of it is as this structure of the physiology starts to shift over, which is what's happening here, then it causes it to align better with the heart. So there's a better alignment, there's a better coordination between the heart and the mind areas of the physiology. And of course that resonation, that new structure of consciousness going on in the head, well, I can feel the energy of my brain radiating out of my head. There's a lot of energy there. I bet you if you put your hands up and feel what's going on in the brain. You have chakras in the middle of your hands, and if you put them up near the head like this, just as I'm doing, you'll feel all the energy radiating out the head. You can feel all the shifting that's going on in there, all this expansion and refinement and upgrading of the actual physical structure of the body as a byproduct of eternal love going in there. It's very beautiful, very interesting. Nice, good. So here we're creating a loop, a self-referral loop of consciousness, right? Consciousness goes like that, it's looping back and forth. So that, and as we loop like that, we offer that to the feet of divine being, because then the loop goes to infinity. Infinity is so perfect thing to bring in at this moment. Now it's looping to the heart. And so what that means is an increase of intelligence in the heart chakra, because this area of the body so humbly, so devotedly restructured itself to support a better coordination between heart and mind, then the heart recognizes and honors that. And so the heart then receives its level of its own upgrade, its own expansion of capability and understanding, its ability to think. Thinking with the heart. My feeling, that's me talking from my heart, right? I was saying I think before, now my feeling is that the potential for the heart to evolve is very big within the body of humanity. We have, if we look at the evolution of the human physiology over, the course of millennia, let us not get caught in details. Anyway, over the course of hundreds of thousands of years, has been a growth in the size and complexity and capability of the brain. And I feel that there is a potential for this to happen in the heart. It's interesting, we're still in the health area, although we should probably go to the next area. But I did want to make this one more point. I know we've got a lot of Europeans with us. Thank you, everyone in Europe, for being with us today, this morning, this evening for you. But in America, years ago, the number one killer of Americans was heart disease. And just at this very second, it's occurring to me, if the number one killer in America is heart disease, could it possibly be that there's a little inherent weakness in the structure of the heart, and there's some potential for hearts to be stronger, to express greater potential. And the reason that as a race, or the American people, have suffered from so much heart disease over the last century, certainly, I don't know how far back the statistics go, is because that's the area where evolution is required. That's our bodies pointing, going, hey, look at this, we need to look at this, there's something wrong here, we need to pay attention to this thing and fix it. I mean, I know Western science has had its trying to fix it, but we're 100 years out here, and it still is, I think it's still the number one killer in America. In fact, anyway, we could go into a long talk about the relationship between the agricultural business and the medical establishment, but let's not do that right now. That's on the surface. We need to keep going in the subtle, because this is why we are here together, and this is exactly what we are restructuring. We are exactly restructuring the relationship between metabolic process and healing process. How we metabolize not only food, but experience. How do we metabolize our experiences? Are we able to turn our experiences into energy and bliss and joy? Or do they drag the physiology down? And the answer is, every experience is for the sake of evolution. Everyone. Even if we have habits, old habits or cycles, patterns of behavior that are ingrained to respond with discord to various experiences, even that itself is addressed. We address that experience, and that's many generations, again, many generations and past lives. So going into the subtler levels of the physiology down here, this is where we want to take that eternal love, and we want to get it into, if it is eternal love, we offered it once as a collective, we offered it back into ourselves and back to the feet of the divine. I'm asking divine being, if there's a way to get that eternal love element stabilized at every single point, every single point of infinity as it manifests up through the body, through all the layers of density and abstractness in the physiology. The answer that's coming back is that the upgrade on the brain is going to support the capability of seeing all experiences in the light of their evolutionary value and improvement for everybody. And can we offer that back to divine being? Because that really can please be expanded to infinity, and please, to whatever degree, to wherever it is destined to go in creation, to wherever it is most appropriate for the sake of evolution, cosmic evolution. I was thinking it was going to go back to the ancestors because I knew some of them had issues with that, but it went to the center sun instead, which means it went to the center, the light in the center of our universe. And from there, it is radiated to every corner of the universe. It went to infinity, right? We offered it back to the divine being. So it became infinite. And now it radiates forth infinitely. It's like a beacon. You guys, we created a beacon. I didn't know we were going to do that. You guys are way cool, way cool. So what happened was this beacon of light is radiating out now to the entire universe. And what it's doing is it's communicating to the rest of creation, the rest of our manifest, all the other stars and the solar systems and the planets and so forth, that something is happening on Earth as part of this big cosmic transformation taking place. And we are players. We are part of this cosmic evolution in such a way as to help to establish our status in the collective, the cosmic collective, and the family of beings, of corporeal beings. It's like a huge celebration. I feel as if cheers of joy and appreciation are rising up all over the whole cosmos, applauding the work that you have done, that we have done, that we are doing, that we're doing for ourselves and for the rest of our earth. You guys are so beautiful. I had no expectation on that. Thank you, all of you, for having no expectation on that. Thank you, all of you, for doing this exactly the way it is supposed to be done. That's how it's done, guys. We just did that the way that's supposed to be done. That was beautiful. God, you're beautiful. God, you're beautiful. Your God selves are beautiful. And for your God selves, I'm saying, God, you're beautiful, right? And what's coming back is the God selves are saying, that's nothing. That is nothing. Just wait. We're just warming up. There is more to come. There is more, bigger and better. Oh my God, you guys are amazing. Okay, what's the last area? We still have a few minutes. Yeah, that's probably to be continued, betcha. More webinars and future webinars. Wealth. Let's do wealth. Let's do wealth. Wealth is about resources and opportunities. Wealth is about resource. I have said it before, and I will say it again, that love is the commodity of the universe. The real wealth is love. I guess we just proved that, didn't we? Sorry, I'm patting us on the back a lot, but it's pretty cool. You guys are pretty cool. Yeah, wealth is the commodity of the universe. Everything, every being in creation, even those who live on planets where they don't have coins, even those who live on other places, they all value love. So the capability and capacity to multiply love, just as we did today, is the very heart and soul of creating wealth. Having the support of the group is great. In these webinars, we can do these like super fancy pants things, but for each of us to be able to do it individually as well when we're not, because as much as I would love to have a wealth webinar or have webinars 24/7, 7 days a week, all day long, just sit with you guys and we can just heal the whole universe or whatever. As much as I'd like to do that, we can't, obviously. And so the webinars come up only every 2 to 3 weeks. Therefore, in the in-between times, we would like to stabilize our capacity to reach in to the deeper, finer levels of creation and recognize, honor, and expand upon levels of love that are eternal and huge, and then be able to radiate that through our actions, through our thoughts, through whatever we love to do to everybody else, so that that restructures itself at the superficial level of creation, because you can't really see love, right? You can see someone acting loving to someone else, but you can't. Love isn't something, you know, my kids used to make me little cards with hearts on them. They were really cute, but they were pieces of paper. What was the love wasn't the piece of paper. The love, right, is inside thing. So it manifests as wealth. It manifests as wealth. I got a question. How about healing to manifest? Oh, thank you, anonymous viewer. How about a healing to manifest? Well, that's a good idea. I like that. Let's. So, karma blocks, karma and belief systems block. Oh, okay, so this is the reading part of the healing. Whenever we do a healing, there are 2 parts, right? We look and see what's all in the way, and then we do the shifting on the level of consciousness to clean up the area. So I'm seeing karma, I'm seeing illusion, I'm seeing pain bodies. Especially with the karma, though, for some people, I'm seeing that certain lessons are easier learned when there isn't a flow of wealth. At least the soul feels, the soul at some very deep level. So this is a belief at a deep level of being, subconscious, unconscious level of the mind, not subconscious, unconscious level of the mind. There's a deep held belief that, well, in order for my soul to successfully, efficiently move forward on its journey, wealth would be an inhibitor. Wealth would inhibit that process. Illusion, that's an illusion. And we've just demonstrated for ourselves that more love is extremely useful for moving forward on the evolutionary path. More love, extremely useful. If we think of wealth in terms of love, then all of a sudden that illusion starts to dissolve, because really wealth is the movement of love. It is the movement of the most precious commodity in creation. So what I see happening is causal body is producing a kind of a light medicine, which is moving up particularly into the mental body, into subconscious, unconscious levels of the mind, like an oil. It's a very permeable material that is kind of softening up and soothing up that area of the physiology, the subtle physiology, to create flexibility, along with this dissolving of illusion. We're going back and we're doing more layers down in these subtler levels, particularly spirit body level of creation, dissolving feelings of worthlessness and I don't deserve it and I'm not good enough. Because nobody has a monopoly on love. So love is infinite, and you have as much of it as you can ever want or need. You can produce, you can self-produce as much of it as you could ever want or need. And therefore, there is no loss for love. There is no loss. I'm feeling this clearing of illusion, moving very much through both the spirit and the astral level of the physiology. Because this is where the impressions of loss, grief is one of those main elements. I loved somebody and now they're not with me anymore. That's also an illusion. They're never not with you. If you love somebody, even if they're not in their physical body anymore, you still have them. You always have their love. They always have your love. I'm looking for any other places where love is being blocked. There is a kind of attachment, like a little bit of a expectation, kind of holding on or grabbing on to the love, and it's in a very kind of intimate place in the being, kind of in the inner sanctum of the self. There's a little bit of a attachment there. So that needs to, expectations, attachments, judgments, holding on. So that's clearing. It's in the inner sanctum of the self. When it can let go, then the love flows like flowers at the feet of God. It flows back to infinity. And then how can you hold it? It's like holding on to air. This air is everywhere. Oh, holding on to air. Gotta let it go. It's just natural and spontaneous. This group is very beautiful. Even though we're doing this work of wealth for ourselves, now I know what you meant when your divine being said that the work that we're doing here in this group, we're only just beginning. We're only scratching the surface. The reality is that I am seeing this group in its beautiful heart, in its tremendous and powerful capacity to create love to infinity, moving into a core of darkness in earth consciousness within the family of humanity to open up the flow for the redistribution of wealth. The redistribution of wealth. This is the key. People have been talking about the redistribution of wealth on earth for years now, and something was blocking it. This is what was blocking it. There was the lack of understanding of the relationship between wealth and love. And in so doing, I am actually literally seeing structures decomposing. I am seeing blockages, I'm seeing walls, I'm seeing structures made of darkness disassembling, deconstructing, because the love, this group, our powerful, amazing, beautiful, capable group, are offering, again, to the feet of the divine. The divine does it. We don't really do it. We are putting our awareness intelligently, right? At the beginning, I said, this is what energy work is. We direct intelligence, we direct it. Love is well. Thank you for this healing. Oh, yes, I love you. I love you. Everybody saw that on the chat? Yay, the O'Donnells. Yeah. So it's going into that structure. Being does it. You know, we are experiencing it. That's what we do. This is the antenna. Physical body experiences it the way it experiences. Mental body synthesizes and analyzes the experience the way it synthesizes and analyzes. But the real doing is just being, because there's only being. There isn't anything else. So being is doing it. And awareness moved like that in the group. The awareness went zoop, and it went into that place in the collective consciousness of humanity where the concept of redistribution of wealth has been brilliant, but has been blocked somehow. What was blocking it went into the block, and it just starts working on the block. And it's just decomposing it. It's uncreating it. It's taking it apart. It's softening at each little hard, sharp little hard black thorn in that structure. The love is just moving in and massaging it like an oil, that same permeable medicine, that light medicine that your causal bodies are starting to get used to making that medicine. And that's going to create a lot more flexibility, not only in your own nervous system and refinement for the physiology. It's also very good for the skin, that stuff. Makes it like plump, but also into these subtler levels of creation where these structures have been set up to block the ability for wealth, for goodness to distribute in a healthy, fair, compassionate manner to all the people of Earth. Feels amazing. Like I said, any one of these points in the webinar is so beautiful, like sitting on the shore of the ocean and watching the waves come in. I feel like I could sit here and watch this forever. It's so beautiful. And there's definitely a part that is doing that and will do that always. But from the practical perspective, from the practical point of the webinar, we have come to our time. And out of respect for your time, and for those of you in Europe who are coming toward your bedtime, I don't want to be responsible for denying you a beautiful night's sleep. So I'd like to, at this time, thank everyone for being with me. I don't have words for my appreciation for your being, for my appreciation for your participation in today's webinar. It's just incredible. You're incredible. I love being with you. Thank you for joining me. We had fun today. Okay, so I'm going to sign off. For all of you who joined today, this webinar counts as one free distance energy work session for you, because we just started a new program where we're offering a free distance energy work session for every webinar in which you participate. So that's my way of giving my love and thanks back to all of you for doing this and making this experience possible for me, because it's also really incredible for me to do this with you. I love it. So thank you everyone for doing this. Stay in touch. Let me know how things go. If you have any questions or anything more you want to contribute, I love to hear from you. All right, bye. Have a great weekend.